Today we're talking about the 2008 film Class by director Laurent Conte. This film is about a teacher, and I would say ninth grade, maybe. I think at some point it might have mentioned eighth or ninth grade, but the key thing is at the grade level would be students age 14, 13, 14, 15, roughly. So we get a sense of this type of student. And so it's a film that outlines the tension between student and teacher.
Mm.
And this is interesting. This is a film starring Francois Begaudot, who also wrote the novel in which it's based, and he wrote the screenplay. And it won many awards, and you can understand why, because there's a realism to this film. As I was watching it, I kind of felt the teacher's pain in his real power struggle between the students. A lot of students, in the film, you kind of see that there is kind of an explosion between one particular student and him, but there are multiple students this teacher interacts with in a negative way. I mean, I'm not putting it all on the teacher. I think it's a subtle film in that I think a lesser writer or director would have painted this teacher as a villain, but he kind of shows a desire to reach the students, but he has subtle flaws. It's ironic because early in the film, he says that we are not here to waste time. We are here to engage in the material, and he teaches French. So it's a French film, but you could see, he teaches French, the French language. But as in this country, we teach English, right? But he wastes time. He wastes time engaging negatively with some of these students. And they have their flaws too, but he makes some mistakes. And so I think it's really worth watching to see that those little subtle things that he does here and there. I will say overall, it's a very good film.
Well, I'm going to share some, Ruben. I think when you said it's a very good film, I felt like it was a documentary, as I was watching it. I love documentaries. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, I love this film. I did have some trouble with the last piece of it, and I'll share in a minute. But what I enjoyed was those interactions, because it seemed real between the teacher and the student. Even the interactions with the teachers, they have these scenes where the other teachers are talking. It seems so real. They're when they're upset about something, or when they're encouraged, or they're celebrating a birth of one of the teacher's children, pregnancy, I'm sorry. And so this all seemed real. And so when I was looking at it, I felt like I was in someone's classroom, like observing. I'm like, wow, this, and then like you shared, Ruben, that he had these opportunities to not engage these kids who were wanting to engage, and instead of putting out the fire, he let the fires go. And then he made some mistakes. And I felt like you're right, Ruben, that he wasn't like this, they didn't paint him as this bad guy, because he really truly was trying to figure it out. And I feel like he was, he knew when he made a mistake, but it's kind of hard when you're a teacher sometimes to put your pride back and say, okay, I blew it, I don't know. I felt like he just looking, I'm just looking at what he was saying, but his body language, I felt like he was in turmoil a couple of times, because he called a couple of students, I think they call them sluts or skanks. I think skanks, and big mistake, I'm not sure if he was too proud of that comment at all.
I don't agree with you that he knew what he did wrong. I think it's subtle in that he knew he said it, but I don't think he felt too bad about it.
Well, because there's a scene.
I saw the consequence of it, but I don't saw much confession in it. Well, and he did use the word skank. Yes.
Yeah. He didn't bring it up in the report. He made a report to the principal. He didn't bring it up there because he wasn't proud of it. And I think that's the reason why he didn't write it in the report.
Yes, but he doesn't make any confession, Jake. He doesn't ever say, I made a mistake.
No,
And
exactly. I never said he did.
This
I
was
just
this was a flaw in him
right.
where he didn't come clean. He didn't
Exactly.
apologize to the students. This was a big flaw.
It was, and he had many opportunities to come clean, you know, and instead he kind of escalated. And there's a scene where he confronts the children, saying, "Why did you go to the teacher and tell them you know, you guys are not supposed to do that, to let another teacher know what I said to you." And so, yeah, it is a flaw, but because he was doing that, I felt like he was in turmoil. That's just me. I mean, I think that, you know,
It's an interpretation
yeah.
that doesn't come out. And
Well,
the other real
right.
serious flaw that he had was something one of the newer students identified in him.
Mm-hmm.
He was the students were, I don't want to give away the ending, but the students were very furious with him,
yeah,
because of how he handled one of the students who got in trouble, got removed from the class. And one of the newer students noticed this. He says, "You don't talk to us, you yell at us."
yeah.
And I think that's very true about him.
Mm-hmm.
There's this combative nature to him.
Yeah.
Where at one point he asked them to read a passage or something, and his response was, "Is this how you handle your life? Is this who you are?" And he called them a name, but it wasn't the skank.
No, right.
But it was something else. And I think there's a combative nature to him that he needs to nip at the bud, or else he will fail as a teacher.
Oh yeah, 100% agree
Even
with you. Don't you? I agree with you 100%. But would you say also, Ruben, that sometimes we go where our leadership takes us? In this sense, this was a whole school issue. I think there's a principal who comes in with a new student. That student I think you're talking about. He comes in and he makes the students rise. He goes, "Well, I'm not doing this to make you guys feel like you're lower or you know, degrade you." But that's what he's doing. When someone says that, that's what they're doing, you know. And he did that. I said, "Oh, this is," and I thought about that later. I go, "This is a school issue. This is a systematic, you know, we're having a not just this one teacher having this issue, we're talking down to the kids or making the kids feel like they're lower than them, but this is a whole school environment." And so I think it comes from the top. And sometimes I think if you have good leadership, you have people coming into your classroom saying, "Hey, let me give you some ideas." They would see what he's doing and say, "Wait a minute, why escalate it? Why talk down to them? Don't do that."
I don't disagree with you when you say it's a school-wide problem based on the leadership.
Sure.
But let me ask you a question. Haven't you had a principle and a system put in place that you felt that you couldn't really enact fully within your, and I like the original title of this is Between These Walls.
Between these walls.
Right? Yeah. Because you might have a system in place, but you know your kids and you feel like you have to do some things differently. Haven't you changed strategies at times?
No, I think you're right. I think it all comes down to you for sure. You're the captain of the ship. And we've seen administrators come and go, strong and weak, you know, and you're right. I mean, you have to take charge. And you have to say, "Hey, this is how I'm going to run this class, and how I'm going to treat these kids." But I think you would agree that, you know what, and this guy didn't seem to figure out that the more respect, when he was showing respect, one of the kids was doing some photographs and on the computer, and then he posted them up for the kids to see. He was telling this kid, "Hey, that was a pretty cool strategy," and he was praising the student, and they felt uplifted. That's the things that he could have been doing constantly, but he didn't. But if he did that, boy, he would have won them over. I mean, he would have won them over. They would have been on his side.
And you're right. I don't mean to paint him as a man who was just always combative.
Right.
He did have some good strategies. He did want to know their personal story through this assignment. It's I think he called it the personal journal or personal story. I forget. It's kind of like an autobiography, and it does sort of emphasize the students' backgrounds and where they come from, and it is a empathetic kind of assignment.
Yeah.
So,
and I think I'm glad you share that, because that's something we didn't bring up. This is a truly multicultural classroom. We have African Americans, Asian, Native French, and it's showing that it kind of is a picture of our classrooms a lot of times, where we have kids who, in this case, these kids, their first language was not French. You know, it could have been Chinese or whatever. But so these are kids. It's a real situation, and sometimes I think one of the messages, Ruben, maybe you could disagree with me or agree with me, is that it could have been a race thing too. It could have been an issue of like maybe that's something in the back of him. And sometimes we as human beings, I want to say we, because I don't like to think I'm, would do this to a kid, but you have some prejudgments on them, and it comes into
It
the
is.
classroom.
It handles it very deftly, though, very subtly. It's a white teacher with with an Asian or two, maybe, and you're right, African American, not African Americans, African French,
Africans. Yeah.
who and a Caribbean, and so that it's another strength of the film
Mhm.
because you learn something about French culture, how
Yeah.
it's not all French people here, and what he deals with it. And you're right, I think it is there. It's this how do you handle
Mhm.
students from other cultures? To me, he it was a mistake he was making. He was imbuing these values that the school
Yeah.
had without being a little bit more humble
Mm.
in bringing these students in to a new culture. And there's a way to do it. And I think while our video might address some of the mistakes he made,
Yeah.
I'm the teacher. That's not how you talk to the teacher.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. Do you call them out in class like that? Do you embarrass? Nobody likes to be embarrassed. And I think he unfortunately made those mistakes. I also felt like he cared about the students. So it's a very difficult balance you kind of have to rock. It's difficult being a teacher. That's what we can all agree on.
Ruben, as you're sharing that, we both agree it's a very good film. Although I had a little issue with the last piece, and I don't think I'm spoiling it so much. Well, maybe I am, but the whole issue regarding it seems like it changes pace in the last 10 minutes. It's like the last day of school, and everyone seems so happy. And I'm like, wait a minute, how did it get there? How did we get to a place where is it because the kids just basically said, okay, we're being controlled by this system, and we give into it? Is that what it's saying? I don't know.
I like that. I like that because you have to answer that gap.
That's true.
Why did it go from a real combative situation to now people are lighter and sweeter? What I walked away from is when you remove something when you remove a student, sometimes sometimes you do get a better outcome. However, was it worth the price?
Mm.
I walk away wondering, I'm not sure if it was worth it. I'm not sure if, yes, you might have had a better outcome, but maybe they could have survived. Like I said, I don't want to give away too much, but
Yeah.
I feel like, well, I said in the beginning, how do you address, it asks the question, how do you deal with the student?
Mhm.
Do you deal with them in class? And when is it time to remove?
Yeah.
And I feel like they might have rushed the removal. And that's really something you have to have patience with, and you work with students.
And even if you have the kids kind of complying at the end, they've already been given a message. You buck the system, you're done. You're out. And so they're not wanting to buck the system because then they'd be out as well. So I think that's a message that maybe you don't want to give to the kids. Not you don't want to, for sure you don't want to. And I think that might be something that I like what you shared, Ruben. It makes me feel more at peace when you said, hey, they did that on purpose. Kind of make you ask them. They wanted the viewer not to be engaged in it and to figure out, hey, what happened here? And I really liked it. I thought that's the actor, the teacher. He was, what's his name? Like you said, he was the writer of the book, Francois Bigadou. What a great piece of work. I think I'm not sure if you agree with this, but I think every new teacher should watch this. This is just a good one.
I totally agree. Every teacher should watch this. And thank you for joining us, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.